This is 5 Minute Feng Shui Podcast, episode 95. When is it time to move? Welcome to the 5 Minute Feng Shui Podcast, where each week I talk about how to move energy and make money. You'll learn how to create a prosperous home and an abundant life using classical Chinese Feng Shui. I'm your host, Katie Weber, publisher of the Red Lotus Letter, Feng Shui Easing for Wealth. Each week, I'll cover Feng Shui topics that can help you improve your life, share inspiring stories, and always end with 3 easy-to-implement Feng Shui tips that you can put to work right away, and usually in about 5 minutes. Now let's get started on the 5 minutes that could change your life. Hello there, and welcome to this episode of 5 Minute Feng Shui. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I don't really go over a whole lot because it just doesn't really happen that often, but it does happen. And that is, I think there are some times when people need to move. The house just isn't supportive for them. And it's not one of those things that can be improved really by moving things around, because if it were, I definitely would tell them you need to just move this here or change your bed that way, that kind of thing. And it's really not something that I feel like a qualified feng shui consultant recommends, because getting up and moving house or changing your apartment isn't something that you do like a handbag. You just don't like swap your wallet out and off you go. There's a whole lot involved. There's a lot of expense. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy and effort. So, picking up and moving, really, it's just not something that just any old body wants to do just because, I don't like where the toilet is and the kitchen's just not that great, So you don't want to, just pick up and move. Who does? I know, and this comes from somebody who I have moved more times than I want to even tell you about. And if I had to move, I think it would be the end of me right now, especially during COVID. But there are times when I do think it is a good idea. And it is something that needs to be considered when there's certain criteria. And we're going to be talking about those criteria today in this episode. But before we get started, I just want to call out a particular listener who is a member of my private Facebook group, the Year of the Rat Facebook group. I call them the Feng Shui Insiders. And she is just a dynamo, an amazing woman, a special education teacher in San Diego, and just a darn nice human being, a really, really special woman. Her name is Susan Stargirl. That's how we're going to call her, Susan Stargirl from San Diego. And I just want to call her out because she listens to this podcast, and she's also been a subscriber of mine since 2004. Now, if you don't know how long I've been publishing, that's almost my entire career. I actually started publishing the Red Lotus Letter back in 2001. And so this is like the nascent days of when I began publishing. And I just want to say how special she is to me because of that. I've seen her go through houses, living in Plano, Texas, and then moving to San Diego. And she's just a really wonderful person. And it was really nice. Last year, I went out to San Diego. My husband had a little business to do, and we decided to make kind of a long weekend of it. And I invited her out to lunch. And the two of us just sat and talked like we'd known each other, like 15 years, like we have. Anyway, it was just great to be together with her. She's a fabulous lady. So my hat's off to my wonderful, wonderful Susan Stargirl. Thank you so much for listening and being part of my Red Lotus Letter family. I so appreciate you. Well, let's start talking about when you should move out, because there are going to be some times when you just do need to move. And like I said, as an experienced Feng Shui consultant, I think that you should have a lot more tricks up your sleeve. You ought to have some knowledge and skills to help correct a problem. So you don't want to move because your house isn't Feng Shui perfect, because here's the news flash: none of them are. There really are no Feng Shui perfect houses. Every house has to have a bathroom somewhere. Every house has to have a kitchen or a toilet, or a laundry room, garages, that kind of thing. We have to have those kinds of things, and we can't just have a perfect house. And there's no way I want to have a house that doesn't have indoor plumbing. So I will have a toilet, and I will work around it no matter what corner it's in. And here's what I can tell you: you will survive almost all houses. It is true. But there are a few that stand out in my mind. I'm going to talk about that because I do think that you can gain from this experience. And having worked with so many homeowners and seeing what their lives are like and what they're experiencing, it really gives me a wide array of understanding of various homes and knowledge about them. And there are some circumstances where I do think moving is a wise idea. So let's just dive on in. When people come to me a lot of times for a consultation, they're actually fearful. They are worried because they've heard from other consultants. In fact, many times I'm the second consultant someone's talked to, and I do a lot of recovery consultations, like help pulling them back from the ledge, as it were, from someone who's scared the living daylights out of them and told them that their life is just going to completely unravel. Many times they're afraid. They've been told that they need to move out of their homes or they need to do major renovations. They're afraid I'm going to tell them that you have to move out of your house or move out of here or move this wall and that kind of thing. And really, like I said, a qualified Feng Shui consultant rarely tells someone their home is hopeless with regard to Feng Shui or hopeless for their life. And in fact, good Feng Shui consultants will talk to you about your life in addition to your home. So if you have a Feng Shui consultation, number one, make sure that somebody is asking you, what is your experience living in this home? Because when a consultant does that, they're trying to understand how the house is affecting you, and they will look at your life and your home at the same time, because they're kind of like mirror images of each other, and it gives a lot of insight to know, okay, this person's living in this kind of house and this is what's happening in their lives. Now, of course, a lot of people, like I said earlier, worry about having a toilet in their career sector, but that they're thriving professionally. Maybe your life is, I think, your really best indicator of your Feng Shui. It's not necessarily where your bathrooms are located. So rather than focusing on a Feng Shui problem area of your home, taking stock of your life is actually a better way to determine if these Feng Shui flaws are really a problem for you, right? It's if your life is good and your relationships are happy, your health is wonderful, and money isn't concerned, then you don't have a Feng Shui problem, even if the bathroom is in your wealth sector or your relationship corner or at the front door. It really doesn't matter. Another problem is that people frequently think that they are stuck where they are. Now, with a little ingenuity, you might find that a new home or a condominium or apartment is possible. We're going to talk about that because I want to talk about how you really need to look at your life and determine what's making you happy, what's making you unhappy, where are things working for you, where are they not working for you, and then you go where they're not working for you, go look at those areas of your home that they correspond to. So for instance, if your health is bad, well, you're going to go look at the health sector in the east. What's in that portion of your home? And if romance is really good, I would be looking at what's going in the southwest corner. What's happening there? These are great tools and ways to analyze your home, and a good way to be thinking of it rather than this home has good feng shui or that home has good feng shui because the door is this way, the bedroom is located here, the kitchen is over there, and so on. Looking at your life is the best indicator of whether your feng shui is working like you want it to. But let's say, for instance, upon reflection, life really isn't working for you. things are difficult and they've been difficult for a long time. If you're really not sure whether to move or not, doing this sort of personal assessment of your life is a good way to take stock of whether these are things that you can possibly change about yourself or change about your life, or if this is something that just seems that it doesn't seem surmountable to you. So let's start talking about what some of these things could be and the way that they could be showing up in your life. So for instance, one is that life has been one long uphill battle. If constant struggle and misery has been a bigger part of your life than the happy and joyous parts since you've lived in that home, then that might be something to think about. When you're generally unhappy and you have the inability to make key areas of your life take root and grow, this is a good indicator that the house or your apartment isn't supportive or beneficial for you. It could also mean that the environment that surrounds your home is affecting your home and your life. Now, this is something to consider too. Sometimes it's not the four walls that are impacting your life, it's what's outside those four walls. Because Feng Shui starts on the outside and goes in. So the type of environmental Feng Shui that you have makes a big impact on how the house is working for you. So for instance, I remember seeing a house out in California. My husband and I we flew out to California to go look at homes out in Thousand Oaks, California. He had a job offer with a large biotech company, and this was, 2008. And we were looking around at houses, and one of the houses that we were taken to see was a house that was literally perched on the edge of a cliff. The back of the house, when you drove up to the house, is a beautiful circular driveway, and then when you looked outside, it just dropped, 12 feet past the rear of the house, it dropped off like an absolute cliff. Well, it was clear that this family was struggling for some time, and the just that sense of desperation that was coming from off of these homeowners was palpable, truly. And what I think was going on there was no support at the rear of the house. There was just no support. And that meant that it had this environmental support that was a problem. And you could actually see, I had a fear of even being in the house because I thought one good little earthquake rumble and that the house would go just down the canyon. And I wondered how life was for them, how it treated them, that family that lived there. I think it had been sort of, rolling a rock up a greased hill. And so when you look around and you're trying to assess your home or your apartment, look around. We have one of the members in my Facebook group had made a comment about, or she'd been looking for a house, and she was putting up pictures of houses, and there's a couple of feng shui no-nos out there, and I can't go through all of them here, but a couple of them are, you don't really want to be across from a hospital, a church, you don't want to have big power lines cutting across you, you don't want to be looking at a ditch, you don't have a big parking lot at the front of your house, things like that. You also don't want to have, sort of ugliness, truthfully. Maybe you have, for instance, we looked at a house a couple of years ago, and in Houston, and there was this beautiful neighborhood. It was so pretty. Big, beautiful trees at a pool, been totally renovated. And there was a big tall fence at the backyard. I mean, it was just a beautiful house, really wonderful. But right behind it was a big construction yard with all these big trucks, and you could hear them driving around, all the rumbling of the trucks. And it just, we're never going to overcome that. And we're always going to be hearing it, feeling that rumble if we moved into the house. And I'm certain that family did notice that. And so if you are looking at your home, look around to see what's outside of your doors. Do you have beautiful surroundings? Do you have nice curb appeal? Usually, I can almost tell you, with some certainty that I almost 99% certainty that most houses that have beautiful curb appeal have beautiful feng shui. So when you drive by a home or an apartment and it has beautiful curb appeal, that means the landscape around it is beautiful and kept up and maintained, and it looks auspicious. You know those houses. You've drive by in the neighborhood, and you've gone past them and you've seen them, and that house just stands out. It stands out in a certain way that it's real estate gold, especially to realtors. Realtors know what I'm talking about. The house sells itself before you ring the bell to go inside and look. So when you're looking at what could be causing your feng shui, look outside as well. Now, you also want to make sure that there's not like a big tree in line with the front door, that there's no like sharp corners. So for instance, I recently did a feng shui consultation for a couple in Australia, and they're going to be changing their front door. And one of the things they had was a big column, and the way it was oriented, one of the corners of this big brick column was pointed directly at the front door. And fortunately, they're moving that front door, and that's, I think, a very good step for them. But if you were to continue living in that house, if they continue living with that house the way that it was, I think it would impact their opportunities. It would impact, and I think it actually is already impacting. They've been living in this house for a little bit, and the wife is having career issues, and they're just having a few struggles in that regard. And this is one of those things that you want to look at. What's coming at the front door? Do I have anything kind of overlooking the house? So back to this other person in my feng shui group on Facebook. So she was looking at these different houses, and one of the houses had a veranda. It was an apartment type, had a veranda, and you walked out the back, and there were these giant power lines going just right across, like there were 5 big lines stacked right on top of each other, and then right past that was a church. I mean, it was really the feng shui equivalent to the making the cross sign in front of the vampire, going no. So I don't believe she took that particular place, but that is an influencer. If you're looking out all the time and you're seeing something really ugly and it's unappealing, that energy, that ugly, unappealing energy, or that difficulty or block or arrow or smell, even if you have a bad smell in your neighborhood, maybe you have some type of sewer situation going on or something like that, even bad smells. But by and large, if it's beautiful and you have curb appeal outside, you're going to have almost always guaranteed beautiful inside. Let's talk about another aspect of how you determine whether to move or not, and that is nothing has changed in your life. Like you're in a time warp. You're stuck. Now, Buddhism teaches that hell is not a place of demons and flames and the big red pitchfork being stuck at you. Rather, it's a state of being stuck. So when your life is one long march of sameness, there's no growth, no happiness, nothing to really look forward to. You're in the same position you were from a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 15 or 20. Yes, I have clients like that. When life has not progressed, then your home could be holding you back. So you want to look at your life and take stock of it, and take stock of the progress you've made. Some of the most, I'm going to say, entrenched homeowners, and I say this with love and care, but and the understanding of how difficult it is to move apartments in New York City. And some of my most entrenched clients whose lives are that long march, what do they say, that a grave is just a rut that's open at both ends, and it's just nothing really changes, nothing moves. It's just this serial stuckness. And I know how difficult it is to move in New York City, but my New York clients you can't get them to budge. They just don't want to move. They hate the idea of it, and they cling to an apartment. And if you're clinging to an apartment and you've been there for, and I've had clients 30 years in the same apartment, but I want something different. and that apartment has been, that's been the commonality, the common thread through the whole thing. And they've made efforts, and I know someone very both personally and professionally who's made a lot of efforts on her own behalf, and nothing. It's just like planting seed in sawdust. It's just not going to take root. It can't. And that's what we want, is to look and measure our lives by what's happened. If we feel like we're stuck, we're in that same position. I know chronically single people, very chronically single, very chronically no mobility, no upward movement in their career. So if you've got chronic problems, then this is a good indicator that you're simply stuck, and that where you're living is keeping you stuck. Let's talk about another one. And this is growth. If we're not growing, we're dying, right? We want to see ourselves evolving and improving and life getting better as we go along, not this sort of backward slide, right? And good feng shui helps you grow. So let's take, for instance, bonsai trees. They're beautiful, and they're amazing. And you will see these giant trees that have been trimmed for decades and hundreds of years, and it's only 10 inches tall. And to think that if it were a 100-year-old tree, it would be, 100 feet tall and giant, with big limbs, and they're kept contained. So a bonsai tree is actually a good symbol for a lack of growth. They don't grow. They just stay in their small, teeny tiny container, and they're taken out once a year, twice a year, and all of their roots are clipped and their branches are clipped to keep them small and contained. They're really old trees. They're just stuck in tiny containers made for seedlings, so that they're never allowed to reach their full potential. So you want to ask yourself, am I growing? Am I reaching my potential? When your space is too small, you fail to grow. You don't branch out in your career or your relationships or your life. Like that bonsai, you can't grow up and grow on. And this is a very similar state as being stuck. And I have a number of clients who believe moving, it really isn't for an option, and they don't want to move to a grown-up place. And interestingly, these clients all lived in the smallest of homes, and most of them are their apartments, and they cling to those apartments, like I think I was saying this earlier, like they're a raft in the ocean. And I'm a big believer that sometimes you've got to move forward in faith. You've got to move forward with the expectation that you can grow and improve. And if you haven't grown, then it's time to maybe think about making a move, because if I think not growing causes us to feel sort of in a depressed state. And I'll be honest with you, during COVID, I was talking to my husband. I said, we can't go out, we can't travel, we can't do normal things in any way or form, and I have to feel like I'm growing, that we're achieving something, we're accomplishing something, we're making steps and strides. And obviously staying healthy is a huge step in it and is a big accomplishment at this point of the game. But one of the things that we agreed to do was to make a list of projects to do around our house, so that we can see accomplishment, we can see some growth, we can see some improvement, and do whatever you need to do to help yourself feel like you're seeing accomplishment and you're seeing growth. All right, let's talk about one other big thing. You don't like where you live. You know what they say? People say you should grow where you're planted, but the right environment is key to that growth. A fir tree isn't going to grow in Brazil, and a rubber tree isn't going to grow in Siberia. So don't expect that you can plant a rubber tree in Siberia and start making tires. Just not going to happen. So if you're not happy where you are, like the locale, or just where the surroundings where you are, then maybe you should move. Your happiness and where you live affects your feng shui. And although moving isn't easy, it's not the end of the world either. So in 2 weeks, the whole affair can be over and you can be somewhere where you want to be. And that's good feng shui. Let's talk about trying Feng Shui. Maybe you have tried Feng Shui multiple times and you've failed. Too often applying Feng Shui amounts to, sticking one little small thing here or one small change there, but really not committing to taking care of serious issues like where your bed is placed or your desk, or painting your home a harmonious color with the facing direction, or fixing other feng shui flaws. A lot of times what happens is we've got problems in our home and we don't want to fix the problems. We want to do the feng shui. That means, put a fountain or a frog somewhere so I can get lots of money. Instead, my suggestion is make sure that you maintain your house. It's well maintained, because broken equals broke. And if you've got broke stuff around your house, well, you're going to be broke in your wallet, and you're going to feel like you're just lacking. You're just going to feel like life is lacking. So make sure that you focus on keeping it clean, making sure there's enough space and flow. If you've got a bathroom counter that's overflowing with products, hey, clear that clutter off. Get some organizers. I love buying organizers. Buy some organizers. Clear off those counters. Pick up the piles. I was in the Air Force. Yes, I was a pilot. Just kidding. I do like to create piles. It's true. I call it the drop method of decorating. Wherever I drop my clothes in the closet, that's where they stay. No, but I do pick them up. But I have a tendency toward being a messy person. I have to stay on that. But it's important that you put effort into keeping your home clean, keeping it well maintained, no leaks, no dripping faucets or running toilets, no, dirty doors and scuffed walls. If you're seeing things that are damaged, that don't work right, that, the cabinet that is the hinge is about to break, make repairs. It's amazing how you can lift the energy of your home just by fixing it. But if you've done all that and your house is in good repair, it looks attractive. It's attractive to you. It's clean and neat and repaired. And then try doing feng shui things, because you just don't want to put lipstick on a pig. If your house the front door is squeaking and it's dragging and it doesn't look good and there's spider webs all over the fixtures at the front porch, things like that matter. A clean house is a lucky house. But once you've done all that and you've worked on it and then you've applied feng shui and things aren't really working, well, maybe it is time to think about that. It's also a good time to think about getting a feng shui consultation. Especially the more you've got in your home, you want to take it seriously. Or if you're buying a home, you want to have that feng shui checked before you get it, just to make sure that it's good and it's going to work for your family and do what you need it to do. Well, I hope today's episode has given you some thought about whether you should move or not. These are some considerations that I have when I talk to clients, and when it looks like they're in just the same Groundhog Day, that same day every day, and nothing ever changes, or worse, you start to do backsliding. Things start happening with your job. It's not going well. Maybe you're having problems with a relationship. If you start backsliding in life, that's a really good indicator that things need to change. You need a big shakeup. That maybe what's happening is the house has some negatives about it, and that those negatives are starting to mount up. Here's what I know about physics and feng shui. That physics, Newton taught us that a body in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. That means unless you do a big, swift change. So a car going down the road at 55 miles an hour is going to keep going down the road 55 miles an hour unless he's T-boned by a semi-trailer. And so that gets him off that same road and gets him down in a ditch. But this is my point, though, is unless you take a big, strong action on your own behalf, sometimes things are going to keep going in that same direction. So in other words, if it's starting to go negative, it's likely to go more negative, right? Just like a checking account or your savings account. If once it starts where you're losing money and money is going out, chances are it's going to keep going out until you get some hustle and you make a big deposit. So your house works that way too. Once it starts going negative, it often starts negative. Think about hoarders. That's a good example of a house that goes from a little bit of a problem becomes a bigger problem, bigger problem, bigger problem. And that's why those people have to go in, those specialists who just clean the whole thing out, and that they have to start from absolute scratch. If this is what's happening to you, maybe it is time to think about moving out of your house, but it's only in these instances. All right, well, I'm going to leave you with your 3 tips for the day. I spent a little bit more time on this episode than I had expected, but all those little side stories and examples, they take time. All right, so tip number 1 is if you experience several major losses, if it just seems like the life is more about your losses than your gains, something to think about moving. Number 2, if your life is a constant struggle, if you're always having or if it's the sameness, that stuck feeling. So whether it's the struggle or the sameness, it really is 2 sides of the same coin. If it's always a struggle or it's always the same and never gets better, then something to think about. Tip number 3, if your life is taking now a downward trajectory, in other words, things are starting to unravel, things are getting worse instead of getting better, chances are they're not going to get better unless you do something kind of drastic. And if hoarding's the problem, then hire a specialist. Or for you, if you're not a hoarder, maybe just getting a Feng Shui consultation and enlivening your space might make the difference. But on the whole, think about your life, think about your home. Are you happy there? Are you seeing progress? And is it a place where you feel like you can continue staying and having a hope of better days? Well, thanks for listening today. I hope you have a great week. In the meantime, be safe, stay well, and I'll talk to you next week on 5 Minute Feng Shui. Thanks for listening to 5 Minute Feng Shui today. Feeling stuck in your life? If you're tired of the slow lane and you want to start making changes in your life today, head over to redlotusletter.com to sign up for my free 4-week e-course, 28 Days to Prosperity. You'll get daily lessons on how to get unstuck and create financial flow in your life. So go ahead, what are you waiting for? Sign up.